Hey, what's good, everyone? It's Lars here again. Okay, so this patch just dropped yesterday, and I did not get the chance to review it because I low-key fell asleep. It came out like, what, 7 or 8 o'clock? Just like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna sleep, right? So, I wasn't able to cover it yesterday, but this is a massive patch. Like, the ramifications ahead of OWCS China and just, I don't know, competitive ladder in general is crazy because they essentially nerfed everything that was strong. And they nerfed the entire rock, paper, scissors dynamic in the support role. So, it's crazy. And, you don't have to look very far to see that they're targeting meta when the first character they get hit by the nerf hammer is Mauga, bro. Like, this shit is crazy. Alright, let's get right into it. Hotfix bounce update. This is a hero bounce hotfix. Replay codes for March 18th, 2025 patch are still available. Okay, whatever. Sure, hotfix. Bounce changes by both 5v5 and 6v6. Now, that is interesting to me. So we're going to get changes across the board, it seems, which is really nice. It's good that they're, for people who are worried that 66 was just going to become obsolete like OpenQ because they wouldn't patch the game. No, they're definitely patching the game. So we'll see how long that lasts. For the 6v6 enjoyers out there, I really like this. And yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so Mauga, thank God, by the way. Cardiac Overdrive no longer provides allies with damage reduction. Good change. Really, it should have always given you raw HP and lifesteal instead of having damage reduction on teammates in the first place. I find it pretty unreasonable that Mauga presses E and then everybody becomes unkillable unless you have nade, right? And then that just pushes Ana more into the meta, Ana being as strong as she is right now. So no longer a use for that, so I see why they, spoiler alert, they do give Ana nerfs, because she's really OP, but we'll get into that later. Cage Fight, ultimate cost increased 8%, and barrier health reduced from 1500 to 1200 HP. Pretty impactful change, means that Cage Fight is now significantly less tanky, rather. So if teams decide to group in like a Reaper, Echo, I don't know, Cass with right click, any character, Sojourn, or maybe not Soj, but Pharah, any character that has high single like AoE damage, splash damage, high like shotgun spread, they can actually burn the cage without using ultimates. Like, you don't have to go in and barrage, you don't have to go in and Reaper ult it. If there's a lot of team follow-up, then that extra 300 or 300 HP, it makes a huge difference in whether or not you're able to break or sustain in the cage long enough. So that is going to, especially when you're shooting it from the outside with hitscan characters, it's a lot more reasonable to be able to actually chunk the shield down, because the shield is very, very tanky, right? It was tankier than Life Weaver Tree, if I'm not mistaken, and Life Weaver Tree is extremely tanky, so that and the ultimate cost going up means that when you're in the neutral trades against Mauga versus Mauga, you're not gaining so much ult charge just off of basically what is essentially chalked up to nothing damage, where you're just shooting into the other tank all game. You're not building cage nearly as often as you would before if you're just playing Mauga, not for his shift value, but more so in like that punchy brawl value, but instead you're just playing him for the neutral value. You're not going to get cage fight nearly as often. You're not going to get cage fight period as often because this is a flat change, but you guys get what I mean. You can't just sit in the back and poke and build your ultimate for like a second or third fight and then go in with it, right? And when you do, it's significantly less HP. So it's going to make targeted cage fight hits where you go in with shift and you just press Q on top of people, isolate a squishy, isolate the enemy Mauga, and just burn them with your team is going to make it significantly less effective. So you have to be more selective with your cage fight, which I really like this change. Berserker passive. Over health conversion rate reduced from 50 to 40%. Okay, whatever. But still, big nerfs for Mauga, especially this damage reduction. So that 3 seconds that you pop the cardiac, your team is not nearly as tanky and invulnerable as they were before, which is just a fantastic change. What this might mean is, with Mauga gone, I'd say the next two characters in line really were Hazard and Wrecking Ball, right? Hazard, horrible matchup into the Mauga. And Wrecking Ball doesn't have as much frontline presence, which was kind of necessary in the Mauga meta. For those direct brawl trades, you saw a lot of Queen, you saw a lot of Mauga, you saw a lot of these characters that can just run forward, blitz forward, and hold an angle straight. Where Ball really is like playing around a lot. Hazard is looking for a couple off angles. He can frontline with his armor, his block, but it's not fantastic. It's very easy for him to get burned by stuff like Discord, Nade, etc. He doesn't have that neutral. None of those characters have that upfront, raw neutral for the hitscan weapon that Mauga did. So you're going to see those characters probably flourish in the meta which means Genji's going to stick around, which means flyers will always be prevalent because Genji Hazard is pretty weak against them, in my opinion. So really, in terms of the meta, outside of the supports, which I think are going to be the big change in this patch, tank and DPS will play largely the same. We will still see Pharah Echo. We will still see like a little bit of Tracer mixed in. We will still see medium to long range hit scans like Soj, who notably did not get, say, too significant of a nerf. And you'll still see Genji, so you're going to get more flyers to counter him, so on and so forth, right? So meta, pretty similar, just without Mauga. Roadhog next. This is kind of a nothing change. Maximum healing increased from 400 to 450, and ultimate cost reduced by 12%. Hog, you know, he's still not a fantastic hero. He still gets countered by Anakiri really hard. I don't think he really has a place in 5v5. Maybe in 6v6 you can get usage out of this, since it seems like it's an all-encompassing change. I know they set it up here that the changes apply to both. So going on to that prerequisite, or the assumption, I'm going to assume that this is for 6v6 as well. Good for him. I don't know. He's horrible against Ana, and he doesn't provide anything for the team outside of you land a hook, you get a kill, right? Like maybe he has a little bit of frontlining, but a nice bust for Hog. We'll see if the perks adjustment, you know, he got a perk buff to his trap. Maybe that ends up helping him out a little bit, but I still think the more mobile tanks, the more versatile tanks with differences in nuance and playstyle and ability to like adapt on the fly are going to be better than just Roadhog, who's kind of stationary and plays only for hook, right? Winston, ultimate cost increased 10%. I guess Winston was living a little bit too much. I don't want to say this is a nothing change because this is pretty impactful, and this is basically an indirect nerf to the Chain Lightning perk. I know you would use Bubble majority of the time, but in the situations that you would use Chain Lightning, you're not building your Primal Rage nearly as fast as you were previously. I don't know. That also seems like a nerf towards 6v6. Because Zarya, I know, is very, very, very strong in the 6v6 environment, and look where she is, immediately under Winston. Just right under Winston, right? Degeneration rate increased from 2 to 2.5 per second. So that's worded weirdly. Degeneration rate increased. I'm assuming that means that her energy rate goes down quicker. Yeah, 2.5%. So you're losing 2.5 energy, 50% or 25%. My math is horrible. Less energy you're losing, or more energy rather you're losing. So Zarya, when she gets the bubble, instead of nerfing the bubble outright, we're nerfing her ability to be super strong and sustain a high charge, probably above like 60% for particularly long. I think this is a great change. I mean, she's getting a lot of bubble value. A lot of characters who are good in the meta right now, I think Genji, Flyers, etc., they are strong with the bubble. And in 6v6, she's like Thanos, right? A lot of the Overwatch 2 tanks were designed with 5v5 in mind. I think your Queen, your Mauga, your Ramatra, when they get bubble, they're very, very potent, right? Especially Hazard too. Hazard definitely was not designed with bubble in mind. So when you add bubble on top of that, and Zarya being able to sustain herself and her team and then become Thanos, like she's just really high energy all the time in a 6v6 environment with the new tanks, and it makes sense that they're going to hit her. I don't think she's like super duper strong, but she was definitely strong. I don't know if she needed to be toned down in this way, but this seems like a nice healthy compromise where she's not as strong individually, but she's still going to maintain that really strong bubble value for her teammates, whether it be tanks in 6v6 or your Genjis, your Pharahs, making space for you on high ground in 5v5. We got Cassidy next in this first character damage category. We got Peacekeeper, so it's M1. Primary fire fall off range increased 25 meter. Okay, sure. It's 5 meter extra fall off. It's going to make his matchups against Soldier, Ashe, Hanzo, these longer medium range characters, Freya when she comes out, a little bit more easy and to sustain. And secondary fire damage increased from 45 to 50. So this is basically just, we realize that Sojourn is really OP, but we also realize that Sojourn is a pretty healthy hero. So instead of, I mean, Sojourn does get nerfed in the patch, but you'll get what I mean. Sojourn is relatively healthy, very OP, but again, she does take a lot of skill to play. So instead of like nerfing all of Cass's counterparts, which they do, but not as hard, as you'll see later, we're going to buff him and have this little buffs over nerfs mindset and just make Cassidy a little bit more of a viable pick into the current metagame, right? So Cass basically just gets flat buffs. It's really good. I think he was okay, but definitely a little bit underpowered in the context of just how overpowered Sojourn is with 2 slides. Cass, in the advent of perks, he remains relatively similar, and I would argue that even the right-click headshot damage, I don't even take it. I take the 30% Noon because I find the right-click so annoying to control. So I think like cast, not really a huge winner of the perks. So him getting neutral buffs, which is one of the big advantages that he has over the Sojourn. Very consistent neutral. You don't have to hit your rails as much. There's a little bit room for forgiveness. Very valuable for him. Now, this is a very interesting change for Echo that I saw on Twitter recently. I think that this is actually insane for the character. So you have base health reduced from 225 to 150. And that immediately jumps out at me. I'm like, oh, holy shit, they're actually like nerfing Echo? Why Echo? And then you read, oh, they're giving her shield health now. So not only does this character become more self-sufficient, because shields, she's going to be a little bit tankier. There's like a percentage amount of damage that you can deal to health. And shield health and armor is significantly higher to that. So let's say you do, I don't know what the exact math is, if it's like a 30% reduction or I don't know the exact math. Someone in the comments can be like one of those math Andes and help me out here. That'd be really appreciated. But yeah, comment down in the comments below if you know the actual math for it. But basically, damage to health is a lot more damaging than damage to armor and shields. And I also believe that it takes longer for supports, like say a Mercy beams you or an Ana like shoots you. It takes longer for the health to regen from low HP than it does to regen shield health. So let's say you're a diva, you have like, I don't know how much armor, but you take 100 damage and you have 500 HP. You gain that 100 HP back to 600 a lot faster than you would gain 100 to 200 to 300 if you were super low HP. Basically, like the shield health regens a lot faster with any sort of healing resources than health does. Plus, it also takes less damage. It has more like built-in armor to it. So you're not only are you taking less damage, but you're also healing faster. So this is really strong. It's basically just she's 225, but that 225 is tankier. You're taking inherently less damage because of it. So it's going to make her more self-sufficient. She's not going to be as reliant on a Pharah or as a Pharah to Mercy Pocket, to Zen Orb, to any sort of like a Kiri healing sometimes in Kiri meta, any sort of healing resources, break packs, and it's going to take a lot of the heat off of the Echo player. It's going to allow her to play more of a little like a Tracer playstyle, more reliant on health packs, more reliant on your own individual agency and your ability to build copy and make plays with copy. So I really like this change for Echo, and it's a very inoffensive change. It's not going to change your playstyle. It's only going to give you more options. So I'm a big fan of this. I don't think it's too out of line of a buff to make her like immediately meta. I still think she has worse neutral overall than the Pharah. The Pharah will still provide you with more consistent upfront damage. And it also like gives Echo a little bit of a one-up on the Pharah in a health sense. So in the 1v1, she's... yeah, to me, it pushes her role even more so as the counter to Pharah. So I'm going to like this change. Definitely, I am an Echo player, so I'm really going to like that. For Soldier, we have Primary Fire now uses the larger projectile size. Oh, okay. So I guess Soldier was one of the exceptions. Hanzo, Genji, etc. Two characters that had fall-off range increases, or not fall-off, rather, projectile size increases during Season 9. They were the exceptions. So sub-characters did not get projectile size increases because the developers thought that they would be too broken with an increased projectile size. So I guess Soldier, they've realized, oh, well, he's not fantastic at the moment. He's not horrible, but he hasn't been meta for a long time. We're going to give him a little buff, see where it goes. So that's pretty inoffensive. Good for Soldier, I guess. Soj, cooldown increase from 7 to 8 seconds. 1 second extra on slide, considering you're basically always going to take the 2 slide perk unless you have a Pharah on your team and you can use that Disruptor shot. Plus Concussive Blast or whatever the E for Pharah is called, that combo. Majority of the time, you're going to be using the double slide. So 1 second on that. Well, that sounds like a big deal. It's actually not nearly as potent of a nerf as you would think because of 2 slides. But it is still impactful. That's 1 extra second that you can contest the Sojourn when she has, for example, only 1 charge of the slide, which is good. It's going to make her slightly more punishable as she is currently, because again, she is very, very strong. You're able to slide in and slide out pretty effortlessly as long as you have 2 charges. And if you play your cards right and usually hit scan, you're playing longer ranges, longer sightlines, you're probably going to build 2 charges eventually before the heat gets put on you, Monkey Dive, Genji Dive, whatever it may be, right? So very good change for her. She definitely needed it. And the maximum duration reduced from 1.2 to 1 second. So you're sliding for less time. There's 0.2 seconds where you have to jump, because if you play Sojourn, you know that if you just let the slide rock out and you just press shift and then you don't go for the spacebar reset and you use the opportunity to jump, then you're going to slide and then the cooldown is going to be expended and then you're going to lose momentum, right? So the time that it takes for you to get to that point, you only have 1 second before you have to press spacebar. That's my assumption reading this. So it's going to give Sojourn a little bit less movement dynamic, which I don't really like. But what it does do that I like is make her a little bit more punishable by a second. But I'm assuming that applies to both the charge generation for the second charge of slide and for the cooldown of slide. We'll have to see though. If it's for both, then this is definitely an impactful nerf. I also like that they did not buff or nerf the damage side of Sojourn, which I think was already fine enough as is. She's, again, very high skill, but very rewarding hero. You don't want to remove the aspects of the kit that are challenging. You want to remove the aspects of the kit that are brain dead and easily abused. And to me, that was just 2 slides. 2 slides is very unreasonable. In fact, I wouldn't even mind the perk getting removed entirely and giving Sojourn something else. Like, she already has an overclock buff. She already has a ammo buff. But, like, give her something. I don't know what it would be. Maybe a little bit of, like, armor on charge. So, or, like, over health. Some type of something that she can do with slide that's not having just 2 slides, because 2 slides is insane. And one thing that you're going to see with a lot of the characters that have really strong perks is the perks affect their neutral, and the perks don't, like, they're very inoffensive. They're just a flat buff, because there's a lot of trade-off ones, right? Like Echo has the one where she has stickies, more stickies, but they do less damage, right? You don't really like those perks over the, you get a reset on your flight cooldown when you press E and you get a kill with it, right? Sojourn has probably the best non-trade-off neutral perk outside of maybe on a Shrike or like Juno Meta Blaster's headshotting, but you get what I mean, right? Like those perks, they tend to be really, really strong. Pro's favorite, and 60 ammo as well. She has 2 of the best non-trade-off neutral, if not the best neutral perks in the game. So putting her in line, she's still going to be strong. I like this change. It's a good nerf. She definitely needed it. Widow, this is a very dangerous game that devs like to play with changing Widow's HP. We don't know what the meta is going to be like. My assumption is that it's going to trickle down, and the characters that are next in line on the tier list will be the predominant meta. And it's not OWC. In Overwatch CS China, you're probably going to see the next easiest tank, or because the players don't have a lot of time to scrim before the China LAN, they're going to be playing something that they are familiar with. A lot of the times in the Mauga comp, if you weren't playing the Mauga comp directly, you were banning it out and you were playing some type of Winston, Doomfist, or Ball mirror. And some teams opted to play Has. So we're probably going to see that. So maybe it's still fast-paced meta, but I don't know. Like, Sigma is still pretty decent. So I would say I'd be a little bit careful. We also don't have map bans in the way that the pro play does. So introducing extra 25 HP with no trade-off for Widow, again, it could cause problems. Widow definitely is a little bit underpowered at the moment. She's not terrible, and she's not like super OP by any means, but she's somewhere in a little middle ground, which I think is fine for the character. I don't think the character really needed any direct buffs. HP is the really scary one though for her, because she's already a very like squishy character by design. So when you give her a little bit of extra oomph, then it makes it so that like, oh, maybe she's not as punishable as she should be when I'm able to close the distance, because she's balanced by being, again, high range character. Once you get in, she's very difficult to pilot at a high level. You have to be able to hit that shot close range against any incoming flanker or dive tank, and you're constantly thinking about repositioning, right? But now that 25 HP gives you a little bit of an extra safety net to execute properly while also being a little bit more forgiving. And one thing that I don't like about Widowmaker is how forgiving she's been in the past. Now with the fall off nerf, so they gave her a couple seasons back, I think like a year ago, she's been put down a little bit, and she's definitely been put on line. She's seen worse places, she's seen better places, but I'm a little bit worried about Widow nerfs. To be honest, I would just leave the character as is. At any point, regardless of how strong the character is on her own individual merit, when maps come out that favor her map or her design, long range sightline, think your circuits, your Havanas, your Junkertowns, when OWCS map pools start introducing that into the map pool, then the advent of a Widow pick becomes that much more prevalent, even if the character herself is not that strong in a ranked play environment, even off of her own merit. No, if you play a lot of maps that favor her sightlines, she's always going to be strong unless you literally remove the one shot, right? So again, I'd be very cautious as Blizzard to be buffing or nerfing Widowmaker in any shape or form. The big buffs and nerfs to Widowmaker that really matter are nerfs to maps, if that makes sense. So Junkertown gets reworked, Gibraltar gets reworked. These maps that favor her sightlines, they get changed. Again, hero bans, that really impacts her because it allows you ban a Sigma or you ban the Widowmaker outright entirely. There's a lot less enabling of the Widowmaker in those comps and on those maps. And also, not even mentioning map bans, which will come later. And I think it's season 16, season 17. It's 1 or 2 seasons away. Map bans are going to be crucial alongside hero bans to really put this character in line, because she, in my opinion, is only as strong as the map favors her that she's playing on, right? So again, devs, be very careful buffing Widowmaker. I saw a couple people get really angry at this change on Twitter. I don't really mind it, but Blizzard, advise caution, because if we see a Widowmaker meta in the coming weeks, it's going to be very unhealthy for the game. Very, very, very unhealthy for the game. Even if it shakes things up. Shaking things up and Widowmaker being the forefront of that does not lead to a healthy game, in my opinion. Now for support. And seeing these two characters, not much of a surprise. Juno, maybe a little bit. She definitely was not the central encompassing focus of the meta, but she was a Mauga enabler, so I get why she gets changed. Ana, I don't need to say anything about Ana. She is very, very, very overpowered in the current patch. I really like her design. I really like Ana, but she definitely needs to be put in line. So Biotic Grenade, we got the cooldown increased from 12 to 14 seconds in non-6v6 game modes. So in 6v6, you're still going to be able to control off angles, control space, and really deny people the ability to walk forward without taking a little bit of time, analyzing, is this rotation safe to make, or do we have a Kiri to Suzu it? In the 6v6 modes, which makes sense, you want to control tanks as much as you can in that mode, and having them roam free and be able to do whatever they want without getting punished is really bad in that mode, so it makes sense that it's not getting changed. Now, and also keeping healing creep in line. The cooldown increased from 10 to 12 seconds for 6v6 game modes. Okay, so they're just tuning it down, like rolling it back for both game modes. The 14-second change in 5v5 is very, very impactful. Now, before, and this is a big buff to Kiri, and I'll explain why. Before, 12-second nade, 14-second Suzu, or is it 16-second Suzu? I don't remember. But the point being, nade was a lower cooldown than Suzu, which means if you go for a direct trade, Suzu for nade, not only are you dealing damage and forcing the Kiri to use an immortality ability, her main survival cooldown, not only does it make it so that the enemy team doesn't have their survival cooldown, so that allows your Genji, your hazards, to go in for a play without worrying about, is Suzu displacement going to ruin my blade? Is it going to ruin my Haz ult and my hit, right? Or ball slam? And do I die for it? No. They're not worried about that anymore. Even though Kiri still has 2 PTPs, right? Which, again, more of the reason why she's going to be meta, in my opinion, or she's going to get significantly buffed because of this patch, both of her direct competitions being nerfed. But also because of the direct CD trade that you get from a numbers perspective. So because the nade is 12 and Suzu is higher than that, you're always going to be, as minute of a difference as it sounds, it definitely makes a big difference, especially in pro play, when 2 seconds means a lot. But like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds of nade versus Suzu advantage. So you're going to get your nade in the previous patch slightly faster than you would a Suzu. So that gives you a little bit more of an opportunity, 2 seconds of leeway usually for your Genjis, for your Ana yourself, right? For your hazards, for your balls to engage without the worry of Suzu. And if they do Suzu, now you just nade them in the mid fight after your Genjis use blade, your hazard uses whatever, right? And the team is basically screwed in a coordinated setting. So now with this, the Suzu bio trade is equal. It's practically neutral. So this, to me, is basically saying we want Kiri to be meta without actually doing anything to Kiri. Especially with Mauga being gone, there's less of an incentive to play Ana to counter the Mauga. Now, she's still going to be pretty decent to hazard outside of, like, you get Delvin. Her CC abilities are quite strong on the hazard. And Groggy is still going to be an effective way of displacing ball. So it's not like Ana's going to be completely gone. But this, without even buffing Kiri, especially now that she has 2 TPs, this is going to push Kiri probably more into the rock, paper, scissors. And low-key, with the Juno nerf and the Mauga nerf, is going to push Juno out. Because Juno being an enabler of that Mauga meta, and now Mauga being put down, despite Juno, she's got 10% ultimate cost increase. That's a pretty substantial nerf, but it's not like too big of a nerf. But Juno being an enabler of the Mauga, that was the majority of her purpose. Now she's getting nerfed on top of that. Now Ana, the character that was designed to counter that strategy, that Juno break strategy, being hit, means we're probably going to see more Lucio Kiri. We might see more Lucio Juno. We might see more like Lucio Ana counter comps to the Brawl. I'm not sure how valuable that will be. Maybe you could rotate the Ana around against the Hazard Ball stuff, and you can still play her. But to me, both of Kiri's direct competition being nerfed and Brig being unchanged tells me her hat is being thrown into the ring. She's probably going to be a part of this new RPS meta that we're going to see. And Lucio might see a comeback because he's probably the character that synergizes with Kiri the best, and Bap is not particularly strong. She still has everything that you want in a brawly current metagame character. Besides, her Kitsune was not as strong as Orbital Ray, and she didn't have the neutral value of a Bio Nade because of the CD trade, and also because it's not as powerful as ability as Nade offensively. Of course, it's just a purely defensive cooldown. So seeing that, to me, tells me we're going to see Kiri meta. I'm pretty positive we're going to see Kiri Lu in some capacity. We might see Ana Juno Brig somewhere down the line. Maybe some teams will still opt to force it, maybe play a dive mirror, but there's definitely, my point being, there's going to be more support variety in the support role. Thank God, because as much as I love Ana, it got really out of hand. And this is even without me talking about the Strike nerf, which, thank God, I was suggesting this the moment that I saw the character utilize it in the first couple days of the patch. So we've got self nano boost duration reduced from 8 to 6 seconds. So it's going to continue to keep nano powerful for players who are able to take advantage of it. Because I don't think we should be nerfing the nano itself. But nerfing the self nano for Ana means that she's a little bit more punishable than she was previously. Because from what it felt like, when the patch initially dropped, the perks patch initially dropped, and we first, or even a couple days before, and we first saw the changes to Ana, my thought was, well, the neutral value of having the headshot perk in some situations is going to outweigh having Strike, because initially we thought, oh, we're not going to get perk 3 until really late into the game. No, not actually, because Ana both does damage and does healing at the same time. You're getting the perk increase from 2 sources, right? And then you're able to get to perk 3 very quickly. So as before, we thought we were only going to get Strike once or twice a game. You're actually getting it 3 to 4 times a game if you build Nano really, really quickly, especially on payload maps where you're getting level 3 perk on both offense and defense. And in overtime, you get level 3 perk instantly, right? So you're going to get multiple casts of Strike per game, meaning that's 8 seconds where you're practically invincible. Unless you get hard CC'd, hard targeted, or naded by the enemy Ana. And 8 seconds where you have nano yourself. So you're doing a ton of damage on nade. You're doing a ton of damage on shots. While also being unpunishable. While also having a Juno or break to sustain you, right? It got way too out of hand. So I'm glad she's getting nerfed. And, I mean, wow. To me, this is just... I'm glad that it wasn't as late as it could have been. I was a little bit worried last patch when they didn't nerf Ana. And that told me that, okay, coming into China, OWCS LAN, we're going to want to encourage people to play that Ana. But now that she's getting put in line a little bit, there's a little bit of a surprise, fuck you patch for the pro players, where now in scrims, they're going to have to be trying out new strategies and figure out, do we want to continue playing it because we're comfortable on it, or do we want to find out a new meta? We're going to find out, again, this patch is basically less than a day old, so we're going to figure it out. And yeah, that's it for this video. I think positives, we've got support nerfs across the board. This is going to make support a less of an RPS role, and it's going to introduce more dynamics. Whether people are going to be continuing to play meta or they're going to play something different is up to them. We're going to find out. But bottom line is that 2 characters that were really OP got nerfs. And then Mauga, the central encompassing focus of the meta outside of support, was also hit. So considering even through Mauga meta, the patch was really, really, really stable. You had a lot of different characters be meta. Basically, every tank was A tier or above, barring weird characters like Reinhardt, Roadhog, right? In DPS, you had a lot of choices. You had Genji, you had Flyers, you had Cass to a little bit of an extent. You had Sojourn, you had Ashe, right? To me, this introduces more dynamics into the game. We're going to see a lot more comp dynamicism, a lot more flavor in the meta. So it's not just going to be Mauga and then his posse, his lackeys, his supporting cast. It's not Mauga and the supporting cast, no. We're going to see a lot more compositional variety. I would assume, unless teams in OWCS level and coordinated level figure out a specific strategy to counter the current strategy, or develop a new meta for maybe a new flavor of the month tank comes out and Hazard becomes OP, Wrecking Ball becomes OP, whatever it may be. Unless that happens, and even if that happens, you could still see some teams try to counter comp that, or we're going to see a very flavorful meta where an European team play something, an NA team play something, a Korean team play something, and they're all different. We're going to see a lot of stylistic change, a lot of teams playing different stuff. So I'm excited for this patch. I'm very optimistic. A little bit worried about the Widow buffs, but aside from that, this is a pretty banger patch. I don't know about making Kiri strong, though. It's definitely going to make the game a lot more flavorful than it's been the last couple of months, because we have seen a lot of Mauga in pro play. We'll see. For ranked play, this is pretty solid. And this is me, Lars, signing off. And you guys have yourself a damn good one. And feel free to comment your thoughts below. And if I fucked up, if I said anything out of line, if I said anything wrong, please correct me in the comments. And someone help me with that armor change, because I'm not exactly sure any math wizards, any Overwatch wiki wizards in my chat. Please help me, because I actually don't know the numbers on it. I'm too lazy to check, to be honest. So, yeah, you guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you later, all right? See y'all.